created all existing life forms in their present form, and that it was first plants and trees, then fishes and birds, then land animals, and then humans. Intelligent design in the US context, it's a ploy adopted by some creationist Christians to get around the constitutional separation there of state and religion. It's a pseudo-scientific theory that they want taught in schools alongside evolution through natural selection. But in a broader sense, intelligent design does not have to repudiate evolution, only to say that some intelligent being had some intervention in it at some point, even if only to start things going, which is a bit rather like the 18th century deists argued with regard to the origin of the universe, that God just wound it up and then let it work. But because of the connotation of the term in the United States, it's not normally used in this a lesser sense. Now, if I believed in a God creator, whether as a philosophical concept or as a religious belief, I'd be wary about making God interfere in matters of fact. I mean, the science is essentially the collection and classification of facts. I do this only because further observation and analysis might result in a more acceptable or more plausible explanation emerging. So this will say, I'll just stick to arguing that this God merely set things in motion and then let them develop, or that he planned what would happen right from the beginning of the theory of predestination. Now, that way, nothing that happened or could happen or was discovered would or could refute the existence of my God. Now, this, in fact, is one position taken up by the Catholic Church when it claims to be able to prove the existence of God by rational argument as well as by divine revelation, which allows Catholics to be quite good scientists, believing that what they're doing is discovering God's work or the rationality of the mind or intelligence behind the universe. Galileo was a Catholic after all, and remained a Catholic till he died. And it wasn't just Catholics. Immanuel Kant remained a pious Protestant while liberating his theory of the origin of the solar system, and Newton too was a Christian, and he spent a lot of his time trying to decipher the Book of Revelations, which we heard about yesterday morning. And in fact, one of the first persons to put forward the Big Bang theory of the universe, the expansion of the universe, was a Catholic priest, Monsignor George Lemaitre. Incidentally, he's one person you can put down in your list of 5 famous Belgians. Having said this, the Catholic Church is not entirely consistent here. When in 1996, Pope John Paul II issued a statement in which he said that evolution was more than a plausible hypothesis, which was only as far as his predecessor had been put together. Evolution was just a plausible hypothesis. John Paul II in this statement in 1996, it was more than that. A Catholic website interviewed a Father Vittorio Marcosi, introduced as the Vatican specialist on anthropological matters and as an expert on questions relating to evolution and creation. And this is what he said. I agree with Cardinal Ratzinger, who incidentally is the present Pope. I agree with Cardinal Ratzinger. We cannot speak of creation versus evolution, but rather of creation and evolution. To admit evolution does not necessarily signify denying God's intervention. There are 3 moments when divine intervention is necessary and evident. The appearance of life, that is of the first living organisms, the evolutionary possibilities with which God imbues these organisms, and finally the coming of man, whose spiritual qualities implicate God's special intervention. Later on in the same interview, he gave another example of divine intervention. 1.5 billion years have passed between the existence of one-celled and many-celled organisms, and yet there seem to be no intermediate forms linking the two. These links are missing. They may never be found. What explains such evolutionary leaps? Can they possibly be the result of material changes? I see rather a divine intervention. And in claiming divine intervention is needed to explain the appearance of life, it strikes me that Father Marcosi gave a hostage to fortune. And not only to me, there's a Catholic group called, obviously this magazine called Faith, which argues that what he's done is, well, I'll read it. He's fallen into this trap of the God of the gaps. In other words, God just exists to explain what science can't explain. This type of theism grows out of the sensible idea that we rationally need causal explanation, but it cannot be given materially. But if it cannot be given materially, we need to look for a non-material cause. But it confuses cannot with has not yet been grasped in the current state of our knowledge. So that this particular view is put forward by this junior cleric, Father Marcosi, isn't accepted by all Catholics. After all, he isn't the Pope, so his thing doesn't go for everybody. Now, as I say, although scientists have not yet been able to identify the no doubt chemical processes whereby some inorganic matter was transformed into organic matter, I mean, they eventually will. I'm sure eventually scientists will be able to create life themselves. Now, when this happens, of course, the thesis of, or hypothesis of divine intervention will fall. I mean, the same goes for the leap from one cell to multi-cell organisms, and in fact for the evolution of our present species of man, Homo sapiens. But the Catholic Church isn't interested just in proving the existence of their God by reason and argument. In fact, I doubt if they're really interested in that at all. Their case is ultimately based not on reason, but, I mean, as they freely admit, on divine revelation. Because even if a philosophical case could be made out for the existence of an intelligent creator of the universe, it would by no means follow that this intelligent creator was the Christian God. I once saw a program on television when there was a priest. He was an Anglican priest, I think. He was also a scientist, and he was claiming that because of the constancy of the laws of physics, this proved that there must have been some sort of creator. And then he said, this proves that Christianity is true. It doesn't follow at all. It's a big leap from a God creator to a God who had a son by a human being who lived in Palestine 2,000 years ago. So, I mean, there's absolutely no connection between the two. But if you accept the creator-designer hypothesis, there are a number of other possibilities. First of all, I mean, there could have been a group of creators rather than just one, a design team, if you like. There's no reason to suppose that any creator or group of creators is still in existence. They could have died, if that's the word, long ago. And the Raelian sect believe that humans were created by aliens from outer space. And why not? This is just as likely or unlikely as they were created by Jehovah, the God of Judaism. Actually, it's slightly less unlikely. But the fact is that there's no way of telling which of these speculations is correct, which is why in the end it's a waste of time discussing them other than out of historical interest. Obviously the Christian view has much more historical significance than the Raelian view. I mean, they're just more or less wild speculations. The Catholic Church and other Christian denominations can concede that scientific, that is materialist, explanations can be given for the origin of the universe, origin of the solar system, the Earth, the evolution of life on Earth, the evolution of species, and even the evolution of the physical body, including the brain of humans. But there's one point on which they can never and never will give way on, and that is what they call, what this Father Marcosi called, the spiritual qualities of humans, by which they mean having a soul. And as Pope Pius XII put it, and he's quoted by the other Pope, Pope John Paul II, in his 1996 statement, even if the human body originates from pre-existing matter, the spiritual soul is spontaneously created by God. So without humans having a soul and original sin and free will, or God-given, then their whole religion collapses. Now all I would say here is that since the soul is a metaphysical entity, it can't be subject to scientific inquiry. In fact, for science it's